The last day of the woolly mammoth did not disappear when the Ice Age ended. In fact, the last members of the species survived thousands of years later, long after glacier had retreated and most mammoths had vanished from the continents. On a remote Arctic island, one of Earth's most iconic animals quietly took its final breath. No human witnessed the moment, but fossils, ancient DNA, and geological evidence allow scientists to reconstruct the remarkable story of its final days. For tens of thousands of years, woolly mammoths ruled the vast grasslands stretching across Europe, Asia, and North America. Standing over 3 meters tall and protected by thick fur and layers of fat, they were perfectly adapted to the freezing mammoth steppe. Huge herds roamed endless plains, feeding on grasses and flowering plants while predators such as wolves and cave lions watched from afar. But every species depends on a stable environment. Around 20,000 years ago, the climate began to warm. Massive ice sheets melted, forests expanded, and the open grasslands mammoths relied upon slowly disappeared. As their habitat shrank, mammoth populations became isolated into smaller groups separated by forests, rivers, and rising seas. Humans also spread across these regions. Archaeological evidence confirms that people hunted mammoths, although scientists still debate how much this contributed to their decline. Today, most researchers agree that extinction was likely caused by a combination of climate change, habitat loss, and human pressure rather than any single factor. Then came an unexpected twist. A small population became trapped on what is now Wrangel Island after rising sea levels separated it from mainland Siberia. While mammoths vanished almost everywhere else, these isolated survivors continued living on the island for thousands of years. Amazingly, they were still alive while the pyramids of ancient Egypt were already standing. At first, Wrangel Island seemed like the perfect refuge. There were no large predators and enough vegetation to support a small herd. Generation after generation, mammoths continued their lives as if little had changed. But isolation came with a hidden cost. Only a few hundred mammoths remained. Over many generations, close relatives bred with one another, reducing genetic diversity. Modern DNA studies reveal signs of inbreeding and harmful mutations. While these genetic problems alone may not have caused extinction, they made the population far more vulnerable to disease, environmental stress, and changing conditions. Nature added even more challenges. Evidence preserved in ancient lake sediments suggests the island experienced periods of drought that reduced fresh water and nutritious vegetation. For a large continental population, a difficult season might have been survivable. For only a few hundred isolated mammoths, even a single environmental crisis could become devastating. Their future was now hanging by a thread. The final chapter of the woolly mammoth was probably not marked by one dramatic disaster. Instead, it was a slow decline. Each harsh winter became slightly more difficult. Each dry summer produced less food. Every newborn calf became increasingly important because so few animals remained. Imagine one of the final herds crossing the snowy tundra of Wrangel Island. The landscape is familiar, but the herd is noticeably smaller. Older females, carrying generations of knowledge about migration routes and feeding grounds, gradually disappear. Young mammoths continue following ancient paths, but each year fewer companions walk beside them. The Arctic grows quieter. Then, one year, the herd becomes smaller again. Scientists cannot identify the exact final mammoth. Fossils do not preserve moments like that. What they can determine is that the last known woolly mammoths disappeared around 4,000 years ago. At that very time, great human civilizations were already flourishing, cities were expanding, and monuments were rising across the ancient world. This overlap is one of the most astonishing facts in natural history. Woolly mammoths feel like creatures from a distant prehistoric age, yet the final members of their species lived during recorded human history. So what finally ended their story? The strongest scientific explanation is that there was no single cause. Climate change reduced their habitat. Isolation trapped them on a small island. Small population size led to genetic decline. Environmental fluctuations added further stress. Each challenge alone might have been survivable, but together they formed a chain of events from which the population could no longer recover. This pattern is still seen today. Many endangered species face shrinking habitats, fragmented populations, changing climates, and reduced genetic diversity. The mammoth's extinction reminds us that species rarely disappear because of one dramatic event. More often, extinction happens gradually as multiple pressures build over time. Yet the mammoth continues to shape modern science. Frozen Arctic permafrost preserves remarkably well-preserved bones, hair, skin, and even fragments of DNA. These discoveries have revealed more about mammoths than scientists ever imagined. Some research groups are even exploring whether genetic engineering could one day create elephants with mammoth-like traits, though bringing back a true woolly mammoth remains far beyond today's technology and raises many scientific and ethical questions. Whether that ever becomes possible or not, the original woolly mammoth is gone forever. Somewhere on Wrangel Island, thousands of years ago, the final mammoth walked across the frozen landscape without knowing it represented the end of a lineage that had survived for hundreds of thousands of years. There was no audience, no farewell, and no sign that history was being made. Its final breath marked the end of one of the greatest survivors of the Ice Age, leaving behind only fossils, frozen remains, and a story that continues to teach us how even the most successful species can disappear when the world changes faster than they can adapt.